Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today on the ACSOM Bulletin I'm joined by Declan McConville and JP Mason, as always on a Thursday. Welcome back to the show, guys. How you doing?
All right. Should have been with you in the studio today, Paul, but
That's a pity.
Let me down, but will happen soon.
It definitely will. There is actually a train station just over the car park there, so it will definitely happen. You can come in person, have a look at the studio. Someone asked if it was a hairdresser's that we were in. I don't know if that was because of my fosh or somebody seen somebody through the window on the other screen. But yeah, we're here to talk about Celtic. There's plenty, as always, to talk about. Loads to take from last night's game, actually. But we'll lead with the kind of, the run-in to that game. We'll start with yourself, Declan. Obviously, the fans a few weeks ago were asked to bring flag displays and, in tribute to Scott Brown. The Green Brigade had their own display. It was removed by the club, and thereafter began a war of words, if you like, between the club and the Green Brigade, and it overshadowed a wee bit, I think, the lead up to the game, certainly. Declan, what's your take on this? What's your thoughts? And, that they have clashed in the past, the Green Brigade and the club. Are we getting to the stage where the damage could be irreparable, or will we be able to, start afresh when Dominic Mackay comes into proceedings?
I hope that as a case that we start afresh. I think Peter Lawwell's relationship with the GB has probably been fractured. I don't think there's probably been a lot of contact there, and hopefully Dominic Mackay can sort that. In terms of yesterday, I know there was a kind of split, maybe an opinion with some people saying that it was the wrong time and whatnot, but I think as Celtic fans you have a responsibility and a duty to stand up when you see oppression happening in other countries with the foundation of the club. I think it's important to remember us as fans see the club very differently from how the PLC view the club. And in terms of yesterday, I don't think under COVID rules that there would have been nobody watching that display going out unattended in Celtic Park. So somebody would have been there, I assume. If not, that's Celtic's responsibility and Celtic's fault. And that if the club didn't want to, kind of cause confrontation then, they could have sorted this out then and said, no, wait a minute, don't put that out or whatnot. And I don't think as much would have been made of it. But the fact that the club let the GB in, put it out, take a photograph, and then wait until they leave is very poor. And anybody creating a toxic atmosphere yesterday wasn't the GB, it was the PLC board.
Now, I expect a lot of comments to come in relation to this. As you can imagine, on social media, as soon as the news broke, it went viral, as you would expect. We have a YouTube message coming through. Left-wing ultras and Tories will never get on. It's about acceptance of the differences. And I remember back, you'll be able to tell me the exact game, Declan. It was a game where one of the displays that we had, and I think it was a final, it could have been the Aberdeen game, but correct me if I'm wrong, and it was a uniform so simple in its style. You remember that?
The Linfield game even as well, there was a display that was a bit, but I think there was, yeah. I think it was an Aberdeen game, that one.
And I was speaking to, because it was at Hampden, that's what's making me think, and I was speaking Hampden, to, one of the security guys, one of the heads of security, who was speaking about that because they got into a bit of trouble for allowing it to happen, because of the connotations of the song that the lyric comes from. And it became pretty clear to me that the person I was speaking to didn't have a clue what the song was, what it meant, or any of that kind of stuff. So I think that, you've got that on one hand, and then you've got something completely different on the other hand. Like you say, making a demonstration to tell people who are oppressed that you are being supported all over the world. And, they've done it before, and that message travelled the world. I mean, you'll remember Roger Waters putting it as his backdrop as well, wherever he played. Celtic fans were lauded for that. We were fined for that. We were able to raise money through the Green Brigade to pay the fine and more. And you just think that there is such a disconnect, because on the one hand, things that you would have thought might have been questioned go under the radar, and then other things that you think, well, how is this offensive? I think that is where I'm coming from here. How is, actually putting out a flag offensive? We know the backstory. How could it possibly be perceived as being offensive, Declan?
Yeah, I think yesterday as well, I never touched on it. There was a tribute in there to Salah, who was a guy who did a lot for Ada Celtic, a refugee camp as well. So if they were even going to leave at least one, that was the one to leave. So the fact they also took away a flag in tribute to somebody who had recently passed away, who an image that the North Curve put up is standing inside Celtic Park with the club captain, Scott Brown, along with other individuals. It's kind of a situation of did it suit the narrative then, but doesn't now.
We know how fractured the relationship, not just with the Green Brigade, maybe, Declan, we've spoken about it between the fans and the club all season, or for large parts of the season. And, like you said there, someone will have been in attendance whilst the demonstration, if you like, has been displayed. They've allowed them to do that, take pictures and leave. Do you think making the statement, JP, was really the bridge too far? Do you think that was the one that threw the cat amongst the pigeons? They may have decided after the event, having spoken to X, Y and Z, they might have thought this isn't appropriate, right? But then it's the statement that then kind of throws that back at the Green Brigade, isn't it? It's almost, it's pretty critical.
It is, and I mean, there is things that the Green Brigade have done that I don't agree with, and things that, I would say are not in my name as a Celtic fan, and things are done at the club sometimes that we as a fan base then get, tarred as a whole. For example, the fracas outside Celtic Park after the Ross County game, that suddenly becomes the Celtic fan base that did that. That's the narrative now. That's just that, and the whole shark thing with the gate and the barrier and everything. You see rhetoric now which is basically like the Celtic fans did this, and it's like, well, no, the Celtic fans didn't do that. That was a handful of people, maybe a couple of hundred if you're lucky, that didn't represent me. But because they did it in such a public way, and it was caught by the media, then it suddenly becomes Celtic fans, quote unquote. And I disagree with that, and people might have a go at me and say, oh, well, who are you to say this or that? And it's just like, well, I don't want someone speaking for me as a Celtic fan and being reckless with their actions, whether it's throwing things at the team bus or whatever. But on the flip side of that, to sound like Russell, flip it, and he does say that a lot, but I like it. Flip it, and what happened yesterday is completely in my name, and I absolutely endorse it. And then you'll get people going, oh, Celtic fans, they don't know who they are, they just want to get involved in everything around the world. And it's just like, well, what? So we're just supposed to ignore oppression in another country and just be like, oh, well, just let them get on with it, we'll not try and support them in any way. So for that to be put out there at Celtic Park yesterday by the Green Brigade and then to be taken down is, I mean, it's disgusting as far as I'm concerned. It's really, really poor judgment, and like Declan said, somebody should have surely been there overseeing it. But did they just go, aye, on you go, guys? Like no one was there looking at what they were doing.
Well, I've been in the stadium once when it was not a match day, it was just like a run-of-the-mill day, JP, and you can't move. So you're obviously signing in, there's the whole security aspect of it.
Aye.
And the person that you're there to see is with you every step of the way. You can't just go wandering, So I think you're spot on with that. There would have been someone, I guess, who would have been there in attendance, observing what was going on. And as I say, what if they made a decision, and that decision was, this isn't about making a political message or using an opportunity to do that. This is all about Scott Brown. And they decided, let's say the club took that tact and said, we're going to remove this. I think the statement was the bit that really became inflammatory, because if they had made a decision, I'm pretty sure that by the time it came up on the screen, the Green Brigade may have commented online about that, the fact that it's been removed, not to their knowledge. But I think it was a statement. And I'm looking at some of the points that are coming in. Paul McKenzie joins us on YouTube. Welcome to the show, Paul. The board seem incapable of understanding the feeling of fans even after this disastrous season. And you know what? Yesterday, I spoke to you earlier, JP, when you were on your way into the studio. We spoke, obviously, to a Celtic supporter, Declan, on the ACSOM Bulletin. On the Dial-In Show, which is on every Wednesday. If you want to get involved in that, send us a message, tell us what you want to talk about. You can come on for 15 minutes or so. But there was a guest And I think that if anyone watched the show, they might guess that guest is pretty well placed in relation to this season and in relation to Neil Lennon. But a lot of the answers and a lot of the points that were being made, I felt, were far removed from what the Celtic fan base feels, Declan. This has just removed us even further, do you feel?
Yeah, I thought it was even... I had the pass on last night before the game, and they're showing you Odsonne Edouard's goals of the season, but we let the people sing playing it as a tune, which I thought was quite hypocritical and very much tongue-in-cheek. I see different comments in the comment section there, and some of them are just ridiculous. I think a lot of people would always put Celtic and politics quite closely linked together with the whole tricolour episode that happened, and as well as that, Bob Kelly even stopped Celtic going to play a match behind the Iron Curtain too. So, I think Celtic's always had a very transcendent link with politics, and it's something that is in our roots and something we should carry on. I think Brother Wilfred yesterday would have been very proud of what the GB did.
Mm-hmm. When you're looking online and almost instantly, JP, you're thinking to yourself, this is a PR disaster once again. I mean, does that go through anybody's mind? I mean, you just knew that if you were going to react in the way that the club did, removing the flags of Palestine and then making a statement, you just think, I thought we were building bridges here. I thought that there was going to be a new approach with a new CEO coming in. We've spoken loads on the podcast and on the show about culture. There's a culture at the club. Apparently there isn't a culture at the club, according to our guest yesterday, but there certainly is a culture there that we have to change, and we have to work together as a fan base and as a club to ensure that we're actually working together, because I think Brendan Rodgers did say, the Holy Trinity of the club, as in the board and all the staff, the players and management and the fans, that's your Holy Trinity. And when you're working together, you're unstoppable. It feels as though we're getting nowhere fast at the moment, JP, in terms of rebuilding that kind of relationship.
No, it's fragmented, to say the least. Whoever okayed that statement to go out yesterday, if they weren't doing that with their head in their hands, and it was in a regrettable sense, regardless of the wording, but if they weren't doing that thinking, oh no, here we go, this is going to be terrible, or if they were doing it going, nah, get it out there, this is unacceptable. They've tried to hijack. We've given them the access in good faith, and they've tried to hijack it. So no, get it out there. Tell them this isn't acceptable. If it was delivered like that, then there's deep-rooted problems that are so disconnected to. I know that not all Celtic fans will care about Palestine or even know what was going on there. I'm fortunate to have been in a position where I was actually in Palestine, and I've been in Jerusalem, and I've seen and I don't want this to become like, oh, JP's done that. And I found myself there by complete accident a few years ago. It's a story I can't really go into, but I did find myself there, and I've witnessed it and seen what these people are living, the conditions these people are living under. And I was invited into a Palestinian's house in Bethlehem, and his family gave us, traditional tea and cakes, and his big brother, who had better English, told us what it was like to live there, and the oppressive rules and how they can't get work if they don't have a dual passport and things like that. It's absolutely horrendous. So from a personal point of view, that hurt me yesterday, to see the club that I spend a lot of money in and have followed all my life, to just sort of take away this tribute, and not tribute, but this solidarity with the people, and which has been there, as you said before, with the full stand display, which was a huge impact. Yes, we got fined for it, but then the genius move of coming up with the match to fine for Palestine was a masterstroke on whoever came up with that. And it's almost like we're beating the club at our own what's the word? Not marketing, but we're beating our club at our own endeavours. The club should be matching the fans, not the fans shouldn't be ahead of the game in terms of what they're doing with regards to things like that. So, yeah, I'm appalled at it.
Yeah, I mean, also, some people are saying, well, no matter what the club do, because, you know, they released the Bruni tribute tracksuit for 70 quid. So they see an opportunity to market that. And then some people are saying, well, no matter what they do at the moment, you're going to moan about it. But they've got to be treading carefully, you think. You know, a few weeks ago, the tweet came out, Declan, around not half of anything and all this kind of stuff. And there was a few people in ACSOM saying, you know what, tweets don't win titles. And then on the one hand, you're trying to curry favour by putting something out that you know that universally nothing is agreed on, but a vast majority of people would have supported a tweet like that. Others will say, well, you know, the real issues are the five-way agreement and dealing with EBTs and stripping titles and registrations and, you know, Resolution 12/13. Why didn't you deal with that? You know, the tweet means nothing. But then on the other hand, showing the kind of action that shows that you really are quite removed from the average Joe fan. Now, we have a message coming in from Malone Kenny 1. When is Dom going to address the nation? I do know that there's a fans forum this afternoon, Declan, 4 o'clock, I think.
Yep, I'm doing
so, are you involved in that?
Yes, yep.
You're on the mailing list? Yes, that's fine. So people will have an opportunity. I don't know, I've never actually been at a fans forum. I know Kevin Graham has attended a few and reported back. Will you be given the opportunity to pose any queries or anything to Dominic Mackay?
Yeah, I think so. In the email that we got sent out from JP Taylor yesterday, there's going to be, I can't remember off the top of my head what's going to be covered, but we are going to be allowed to throw in our worth. So, yeah, Dominic Mackay and a few other people from the club are going to be attending. So hopefully we'll get some good dialogue, hopefully get some answers, and we'll just see how it goes. But looking forward to hearing what Dominic Mackay's got to say to us.
You know, there's JP and he's got dual functions. Not only is he appearing on the show, but he's putting up messages on YouTube. Solidarity with Palestine as well. We will be talking about last night because obviously, as I said, it was overshadowed, I think, by everything that happened after the flags were taken down. The display was taken down. And I think that, you know, it is only right to spend a wee bit of time talking about the bold Scott Brown. You know, we actually have been invited to this press conference. I've seen there's been a bit of chat online about the press conference today, and I know that some people are refusing to take part in that. ACSOM have agreed to take part in it because, you know, we have a different view on why we would want to speak to the departing Scott Brown. We don't have an opportunity, never have had an opportunity to speak to him, and we're taking that opportunity to speak to Scott Brown. And I don't think that's a contradiction in terms when we've just criticised the club for their actions over the Palestine display. But each to their own on that, and hopefully we'll have some footage to share. Now, Declan, when you're talking about this great captain of ours who is going to be departing the club very, very soon, one more game, ironically, against his former club, Hibs. And you think to yourself, some of the kind of tributes that have been made from players past and present. Mika Lustig was on yesterday, Brendan Rodgers was on. And I asked Colin Watt last night, if you had a chance to ask him something, what would it be? And I think Colin came out with a great suggestion around the influence that Tommy Burns, the late great Tommy Burns, had for that short space of time at the beginning of Scott Brown's Celtic career. What about yourself, Declan? Given the opportunity to ask the captain anything, what would you be asking him?
Possibly the influence that Brendan Rodgers had on his career, because I think after that 2 weeks draw at Hampden, a lot of people, including myself, thought it was done and probably, you know, wouldn't make an impact. And there's a whole story that Brendan got him down there and they went for a meal and a chat and you know, kind of restarted his Celtic career. Also, probably, you know, did they ever think at that point in time that would be it and over? And you know, how did it change so quickly to turn from, you know, rank rotten one season to probably unplayable player the next?
No, definitely. So Scott Brown, he signs off, JP, with an assist. He's number 7 in the list of all-time appearances for Celtic. And then he gets interviewed after the game. You're the music man. Scooter, really? Scooter?
Yeah. But see, that I think that's one of the things that appeals to me about Scott Brown is the fact that, you know, he is definitely the closest in age to myself anyway. So it's kind of the last of the players really that is even would have been at school when I was at school. You know, I mean, if I would have been in 6th year, he'd have probably been just coming into 1st year. So he would have been one of those wee widos in 1st year that thought they were brilliant when they started. You know, I saw it, by the way, when I was in 6th year, the first years that came in, they were coming up and like, oh, Specky and all that, and you're like, I wouldn't have said boo to a ghost when I was in 1st year. I wouldn't have gone anywhere near a 6th year, but you could just see the change in kind of cockiness and everything that was happening with generations changing and everything else. So if that's what they were like, you know, back then, God only knows what kids at school are like now. But anyway, my point is that Scott Brown is kind of nearer to me in age. So yes, he remembers, I guess, the 90s and stuff like that, and things like Scooter, and you know, he's from a different football era, and I certainly was so sad to see that last night. Just the pictures of him at the end with the empty stadium and everything like that. I mean, I commented on one of them and said, this tells a story, and it really does. You know, Scott Brown sitting on a ball in an empty stadium while we're in the middle of an unprecedented global pandemic, you know, and the empty stadium is the reason why he's, you know, the global pandemic is the reason why he's sitting in an empty stadium and not taking the applause. Because let's not beat around the bush. Regardless of this season, there's no way that it wouldn't have been a full house at Celtic Park to see him off. I mean, I just don't see how that would have been the case. I can't see Celtic fans having stayed away, you know, for that. There's no way.
That definitely. The images are you know, instantly iconic when you look at them. The bit I love about them, Celtic Park in the darkness, isn't the disco lights. It's none of that kind of stuff. It's the Celtic Football Club lettering on the top of the North Stand. I think that just looks stunning. It just fits the image. And as Zinkovic says, yeah, sad that the Bruni's last game at Paradise. Times must move on now, and no clearer has that ever been since we've heard the news that Scott Brown will go. I think after this lockdown and the pandemic, you know, in the months and the years to come, we'll look back on certain things and you know, take stock on it. And the very fact that when we're back at Celtic Park, the next time we'll see him, Declan, he'll be wearing the red of Aberdeen. I'll never ever get used to that.
No, I'll never get used to that. I mean, Bruni signed for Celtic when I was 7. The kit over my left shoulders, the kit it was signed in, it says Declan 8 in the back, because my birthday's the 8th. It's a small boy's top, and now a medium man. So right through 14 years, Bruni, primary school, high school, university, full whack. So many happy memories, so many good times under Gordon, Tony, Neil, Ronnie, Brendan, everybody. So yeah, it's going to be a big miss. It's going to be very weird to see him in a different kit. I don't really remember him being at Hibs, so this will be the first time I'll really see him in a different kit. And he's going to be a big miss. I think he's going to be a big miss in the dressing room, but I hope that when he does come back with Aberdeen, he's duly given that applause, that hopefully there'll be some people in the stadium to do so.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, obviously coming from Fife, you pick up, you meet a lot of people that know him or have known him through his life, and you pick up bits and bobs. And I always remember people starting this rumour that he had Rangers tattoos on his legs. Remember that rumour? And he had them on his calves and all this nonsense. And then I met...
Couldn't they care less?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, exactly. Who cares? Look what he's actually achieved. But then you start to meet the kind of Hibs boys around the area, and I mean the Hibs boys, and they make it known that he's definitely a Hibby. But you know, I just think the way that he's progressed and what he became at Celtic. I look at a lot of players who progressed and became the players that they were whilst they were at our club, and I would say Henrik Larsson was one of the players. He developed into the player he became at Celtic. And we watched that. And I think we watched the development of Scott Brown as well. And when you look at that list, certainly in the modern day, I know we've got Callum McGregor and James Forrest, who could be one club men, albeit Callum went on loan in the early part of his career. You know, these kind of people would need to be one club men to get into the 500 club. Scott Brown done it, having already won a trophy at Hibs beforehand. And not only is he in the club, he's number 7. He's above Bobby Lennox in the list. It's just incredible. And you know how long Bobby Lennox played for, you know. I think he made his debut in the early 60s. He was still playing in the 1980 Scottish Cup final. He came on as a sub. And I don't think we're going to see many examples of that, JP, in our kind of lifetime now, because the game has changed so much. And guys like James A. Forrest and McGregor, if he stays, because that's a point that I want to discuss, if he stays as well, they become almost an anomaly at a football club if they stay there for their whole career.
Well, I mean, the media, if anybody does well, the media have them sold and, sent down south or wherever as soon as possible. I mean, the media were punting Kieran Tierney for a move for long enough before it happened. I mean, Kieran Tierney was away every year in the lead up to the time that he actually did go, I think Arsenal were first credited with an interest in him in 2017, maybe before that, I don't know. But Scott Brown, I used to work with his cousin at a bank in Edinburgh. I worked at a bank for a long time in my 20s, and I got to know his cousin Natalie. And I remember her telling me about his sister at the time, and it wasn't in the press. It wasn't widely known, and his form was obviously up and down because of it. And she, I would speak to her, and I knew things like he bought his sister a Mini, when she didn't have a lot of time left in her life. He bought her a brand new Mini as a present, I think maybe for her 21st or something like that. And so I was privy to that, and because I knew that, and I knew Natalie, I just had this connection to Scott Brown. And this is like Scott Brown as the maniac guy that we signed from Hibs. This isn't the Scott Brown that is now. So I felt like a bond with him at that point, and willed him to do well. When you find out somebody is going through hardship in their life, in their personal life, and they're playing for your club, you want them to do well. It's what we've always done as Celtic fans. You go back to Tony Mowbray and his tragedy, and there's many others. Unfortunately, people are afflicted by tragedy in their lives, and so I'd always willed him to do well. I never ever thought that he would be departing as the absolute legend that he is now. And have this sort of success. Somebody shared the clip. I think it was Darren from Rennie from The View shared the clip of Bruni's goal at Ibrox, and Davy Provan says something like, "Oh, that's something he doesn't do too often. Is get in amongst the goals." And then I just replied back, going, "Oh well, he certainly gets in amongst the trophies, Davy, because he's got 22 of them." So I don't think he'll mind about not having too many goals under his belt when he's looking at his trophy haul.
I know. And the other thing that I remember actually just picking up on is that image of him as a boy, and he's wearing a Rangers top, but he's actually playing for a team that wore Rangers tops, right? Because I remember when I was maybe under 13 or whatever, what they used to do, the managers, they were always skint these football teams in the villages, and they would go into places like Intersport and try and buy whatever jersey was going for a tenner. So you might have been playing in an Inter Milan jersey, you know what I mean? It didn't really matter, and then you would sew the badges and all that one. But I remember that image, and I got an opportunity via Kerrydale Street, the Forum. Some chap had access to various football jerseys from Celtic youth teams, and they said, if you know anybody that needs a set of football kits, let me know. And the person who worked as a clerical at my work at the time knew Scott Brown's dad, who ran a football team. I says, "Is he looking for jerseys?" And she's like, "Aye." So I came in with the Celtic ones. I was like, there you go, better than the ones that he was using when Scott Brown played for them. But yeah, they probably played a season or so in the green and white hoops. So nice to know. And I should have kept a few of them actually, because they probably would have fitted Russell, who's coming in in the comments section as well. But Scott Brown, for me, when you're looking at the contribution that he's made, an absolute legend. And a lot of people disagree with that and say that there's only a few legends at the club. Bruni's up there. If you're ever in Fife, if you ever venture to Fife, and you want to go to a place called Hill of Beath, which is a small mining village on the way to Cowdenbeath, as you're driving in, on the left hand side there's a statue of Jim Baxter, and then just behind that there's definitely a bar in there. I think it's maybe a miners' welfare, JP, just behind the actual statue, and there's quite a lot of stuff in there that Scott Brown's given them. So I think he does a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and he doesn't blart it. He just does it because he wants to do it, the altruism, without saying, look what I've done for this charity, or look what I've donated to this. But, the push for a statue might yet happen with ACSOM getting in tow with some of the Fife CSCs. Now, again, we need to be balanced on this, and Stephen Sloan comes in talking about the Palestine display. I've supported Celtic all my life, and I'm with the board on this one. We're a football club, not a political party. I've seen a lot of comments like that yesterday as well, Declan.
That's fine.
I've seen a lot of comments coming through, and if any others are coming through in the comments, I'll certainly share them as well. Let's have a look at last night then, because it leaves us without an El Capitano, and he gave his captain's armband to James Forrest. Callum McGregor obviously was sitting this one out. When Jamesy came off, he gave it to Chris Ayer. So does that mean that Chris Ayer's a fourth choice captain at the moment? I think Callum McGregor's a vice captain. Jamesy must be number 3. Who is our captain next season, Declan? I've heard some suggestions that we're going to buy a ready-made one. I think that if you look at the players we're expecting to leave, and the 3 main assets being Ryan Christie, Odsonne Edouard, Chris Ayer, we need to move mountains to keep Chris Ayer. I think that the very fact that his fellow professional voted him the Player of the Year speaks volumes. You know what it's like in any kind of sport. If your contemporaries vote that you are the most important player in that team, that speaks volumes. He's obviously well respected. I think he's a leader. I know that there are deficiencies in his defensive play, but for me, I'm looking around that squad. Jamesy Forrest is never a captain. He's very experienced, but he's never a captain. Callum McGregor, I'm on the fence with that. I'm not sure it'd be a good move. I think he needs to get back to his best form. He doesn't need the added pressure of being the captain. Try and keep Chris Ayer. Do you think it's still possible, Declan?
I think, reports yesterday, Eddie Howe's done and whatnot. I think, it's a very hot prospect, I think, for Chris Ayer to look at and think, probably develop his game a bit more under Eddie Howe. There's still a lot of guys. I think last night showed that there's still a good core of a team there that will still be further developed. And I think, with the right management team in, that can happen. So I would certainly offer Chris Ayer a tasty new deal. Whether or not he would want to keep it, he's still young, so he shouldn't be in any rush to leave Celtic. I think he can still develop at Celtic. He's not really played too much Champions League, if any Champions League at Celtic. I think, broke into the first team properly at double treble season. And I think a lot of the time we were playing Jozo Simonovic and Dedryck Boyata at the back. So don't think he's played a lot of, regular Champions League football for us. So that's something they could maybe look at too. And, win trophies at Celtic, why not? So I think even 2-3 years, then he can head off wherever, because he's certainly got it in his locker. But whether we maybe buy in somebody, I know one of the guys being linked with is if it is Eddie Howe, is Steve Cook, who is, I think, roughly about 30s, centre half. Eddie Howe had him at Bournemouth, he knows him very well, possibility, but I'd certainly be offering Ayer a very new tasty deal when trying to get him to stay at the club, because if we can do that, I think it solves the big problems at the back. And I'd certainly give Ayer the armband.
Massive problems at the back, Declan, and Ayer's been a part of that. That's the thing. I can't take away from the fact that he's been a part of the defensive issues that we've faced. I've been looking at obviously the potential teams for next season, JP. 68 days now, as your notepad will tell us, to our first fixture in the Champions League qualifier. And I'm pretty fearful because, as Declan says, I think everybody is of the understanding that Eddie Howe, the deal is done. It's maybe not going to be announced until such times as though, maybe a PR kind of coup for once for Celtic at the moment, whereby all the attention's maybe on the league winners this weekend and potentially going through the league campaign unbeaten and maybe announce it then. I guess that's maybe their thinking around that. But it's going to take time. And, yesterday we spoke about, and I know a lot of people disagree with this, but we spoke about the potential for bringing back Jack Hendry. And to try and get a balanced view on that one, because I don't watch much Belgian football. JP probably knows much about Belgian football as the next guy. We brought in someone who actually contributes to the Belgian football podcast, someone who has a knowledge of the game, the league, and has watched with interest Jack Hendry's development this season. He reckons we need to give him another shot. I think that if Ayer leaves, then we've got to. I don't think there's any question that we've got to. If Ayer stays, then perhaps we allow Hendry to move on. What's your thoughts on Chris Ayer staying, and also on the question of Jack Hendry?
Well, first of all, when I was listening to Declan speak there, I kind of was thinking, with regards to just anybody leaving this season, and at this point, with regards to not just COVID, but also the way this season has gone, we know, right? We've watched these guys play. We know that these guys, this season is not a true reflection of a lot of these guys, the way they've performed. I mean, whether people want to question that or not, if people want to say, oh, they were always rubbish, look what's happened when they've had a challenge. Yes, they've had a challenge. Of course they have, but they've also had the challenge of a really weird year. You know, if we are getting back to any sort of normality, and God, I really hope we are, in sort of August, September, October time, maybe it would be a case of looking at their season, the way it's gone, and thinking, well, actually, if I do sign a new deal or stay on at Celtic and try, under a new management team, and try and get back to the levels that I know I'm capable of as a player, and that we know they're capable of as fans, then maybe the exodus may not be as crazy as we're all expecting. I mean, I could be made to look very foolish in a few months' time, and the numbers of people that have gone out the building are accurate and what we predicted. But I don't know. I'm just looking at it from that point of view to think, well, actually, there probably would be then their interest, depending on what sort of clubs are circling. Like if you're talking Norwich and Burnley, for Christie, I mean, really, Norwich. And I mean, I know people will go, oh, well, the money's so much better, but I mean, football-wise, really, is that where you want to be going? Whereas, if you have a really good season next season, on top of a good Euros, you could be looking at a far better move for the longevity of your career. I mean, I don't expect these guys to stay at Celtic for the rest of their career. They're not going to do a Scott Brown. That just doesn't happen anymore. But with regards to Jack Hendry, the reasons that I would want Jack Hendry to be given another chance is he's Scottish. He's not a clown. He's obviously a professional. Like you wouldn't get the chance that he's had in Belgium to be able to do what he's done and showcase. He's not gone over there and sat on a bench. Do you know what I mean? He's not gone over there and kicked his heels. He's not gone over there and caused any bother. So Scottish, professional, and if the player himself if he's hungry to come back and prove himself at Celtic, then what better than giving a player a stage and a platform to prove themselves in a position where we really need, somebody like that. It's not as if he's, well, I mean, we need players in every position, let's put it that way. But I mean, at centre half in particular, there's nobody there that's got the jersey as their own. Even Ayer, really, I don't think he's got the jersey as his own, because he could quite easily play at right back. So it's not as if he's like your stick on centre half. So
one of the interesting things yesterday that I wasn't aware of that Scott brought up was that the option for Ostend to sign on a permanent deal Jack Hendry expires on the 31st of May. He says so there might be some tactical kind of work going on by Celtic, who might, if there's a couple of other clubs interested, and apparently there's some interest in English football as well, to try and get a better fee. So, the decision may already have been made and they're just going to try and get a better fee. And, under these circumstances, I'm pretty sure that everybody would accept that. I'm looking at players that, for me, are fringe players who don't have a chance of resurrecting their Celtic careers. And, again, it's maybe just my opinion, but I think people like Nir Bitton. I mean, what contribution has Nir Bitton really made this season? Olivier Ncham, Tommy Rogic comes into that category for me as well. And these are the types of players that, let's streamline the squad a wee bit. And a lot of these guys who, they're not going to command £5, £6, £7 million in the transfer market. I get that. But, if you offload a clutch of these players, 5 or 6 of them, probably Scott Bain's in that category as well. And then, you might be able to say, well, we're streamlining the squad, but we might be able to keep one of the top assets. And I've kind of resigned myself, JP, to losing Edouard. I think most of us are. Poor season Edouard, still scores 22 goals. Christie, who I want to talk about in a wee second, I'm kind of resigned to the fact that I think he has the ambition to do that, even if it is a Norwich or a Burnley. JP, I think that's what he wants to do. We all know, we've seen so many players, some would say better players, going to that level. And, not doing it. Gary Hooper's a great example. I always felt, he went down there. He had aspirations to play for England at that stage. And look where he is now. He's virtually semi-professional. And so struggling for a club the last time he was freed. So I think that Ryan Christie might be leaving the building, but Ayer is the guy I would be trying my best to keep. Now, on the subject of Christie, Declan McConville, we have a laugh on the WhatsApp group about data analytics, and Alan Morrison gets it tight because he's the data man, he's the stat man, and he did say the other week there when he was on last Wednesday, he said that Ryan Christie's best in the number 8 position, and that's where we got our best football from. Ryan Christie, that's where he was playing last night. I was really impressed with him, and I just think that we're seeing a lot of things far too late now. We're seeing Dembele getting minutes and showing us what we have been missing all season on wide right. We're seeing Ryan Christie playing as a number 8 and thinking, well, that's the player that we remember him coming in and making an impact initially. Ryan Christie, if you've written him off, is he on his way out? And why didn't we play him as a number 8 when the stats said that's where he performs at his best?
I think losing James Forrest earlier in the season meant that we shifted him out the right hand side, and it was a complete waste of time. He's not that type of player. His assists for this season, I think, are still very good. I don't know if they're the highest or the second highest in the team, and I thought he had a good game last night. But I'm kind of resigned to the fact he's not going to be there next season. I don't think he wants to be there. I think he would rather go and cash in like his mate Stuart Armstrong did. I don't think he's as good a player as Stuart Armstrong, and I think Burnley Norwich is going to be the kind of move that he'll want to do in terms of making a few quid. He's won probably what he's wanted to win at Celtic and would probably like to depart, but that's his choice. But I thought last night he played well, and when he's not hitting shots away over the crossbar, he's not a bad player. I mean, the 9 in a row season, I thought he was excellent for the first part of the season. He was absolutely fantastic. He scored a hat-trick, I think, against St Johnstone in the first game of the season. He was excellent. But, yeah, I think he'll be a goner.
Yeah, it does seem that way, Declan. And Stevie Dock comes in. Celtic Football Club is my team. It has been for 40 years. If you want to support politics, do it elsewhere outside Celtic Park. Green Brigade will never speak for me or true Celtic football fans. Now, the Green Brigade have been on the show a couple of times, and they do say that a big kind of criticism, JP, is that people say you don't speak for me, and they don't profess to speak to anyone, but they are a very vocal group, and I think there's a respect there by the club up to this point, and there's obviously been fallouts along the line, but if they are ever engaging with fan groups, the Green Brigade is one of those fan groups, along with, let's say, the Celtic Trust, the affiliation, the association, etc. So I don't think they try and speak for everybody, but they are a very vocal and influential group. But thank you very much for your comment. And a lot of people think that, keep the politics out of Celtic Park. The other argument is we were built on politics. It was due to politics that the Irish diaspora were still in, 40 years after fleeing Ireland's famine, they were still being treated like second-class citizens. And, the decision was made all around Britain to set up football clubs to support these people. And Celtic was one of those football clubs, and everybody knows the history. So you made a point there, Declan, in relation to Ryan Christie sending wild shots over the bar. There was a moment yesterday during the game where David Turnbull gets the ball. I'm just going to double check when this was actually. It was the fourth goal, 85 minutes. David Turnbull gets the ball, and I thought to myself, how often have we seen it this season where he's had to try a shot because there's nothing on? We've seen it so often. You're playing against packed defences at times, and you become a victim of that because you think, well, I'm going to try a shot from distance. But there was something different last night, and that's something different. That option was Karamoko Dembele. Now, never in my Celtic supporting life, probably since Islam Farouz, can I remember, JP, such hype around a youth player as there has been with Karamoko. The big worry was, of course, that it might affect him, might go to his head. And a lot of Celtic fans, me included, had those concerns this season. He's given us a wee glimpse against Aberdeen then again last night that, we could have been utilising this kid all season. He gave us a right different dimension last night when he came on for his short appearance, didn't he?
He did, and I saw it, and I think, I scoring the fourth goal in a 4-0 drubbing of a team who were already beat. There there's a lot of people will always jump on that, that people like, I don't know, guys like Bobby Pettit and Reggie Blinker, or these kind of guys that would drift in and, contribute a goal. They wouldn't score you the crucial goals. I know Bobby Pettit obviously scored in Amsterdam against Ajax, and that was a crucial goal. But there's been a few players at Celtic over the years that are the ones that sort of chip in with a goal when we've already won the game. But Dembele scoring last night at still a very young age actually showed that he's got the chops. And he can do it at this level quite not easily, but he can do it, and at least he's backing up this sort of the bling and the hype and the Instagram and the sort of that kind of identikit of a player of his age at this point in his career, where he probably does think he's a cut above everybody else at his age level, and he might well be, but you've got to go and play 40, 50 games and then, show that you can do it, and if he turns around and does that, then that's a different story. We're having a different story altogether. But there's a reason why he's not been getting involved as much. And speculation, of course, but I wonder whether or not it is his attitude. Because your attitude's got to be right at Celtic. You could be the greatest player in the world. If you've not got the right attitude, then I don't think you should be given a chance. But we'll see. I know he's got a year now. The revelation is that he's got a year left on his deal, which was, I think, a lot of people didn't realise that, and myself included. So maybe he'll have a chance next season.
There's a website called Transfer Market, and that's normally very accurate when it comes to deals, and that's the kind of go-to if you want to know how long anyone's got left on their contract, JP. And a lot of people refer to that, and I think a lot of mainstream media outlets go there, and I think that sent people down a wild goose chase, because they thought it was up this summer, but there is another year on it. In terms of the attitude aspect of it, I mentioned this last night, but I will mention it again because I know that you were busy yourself last night, JP. But in relation to that, there was a mooted move for him, a loan move earlier on this season for Dembele, and believe it or not, the loan move was to Queen's Park. And we know that there's been a few players gone there from Celtic, and he refused to go. He refused to go, and therefore he wasn't part of the squad. Is that punishment, or is it really just trying to keep the kids' feet on the ground? He's looking around him, and some of his contemporaries are getting big moves. We've lost players to Man City, Liverpool, Bayern Munich. We know that, and he's looking around thinking, well, I'm not playing for Queen's Park, which is disrespectful to the club who are willing to give him game time. On the flip side, let's flip it. And Luke O'Connell, he's gone there and he's performed really well. He's went there and he's just been a professional, and he's got the game time. But Dembele didn't fancy that much, and obviously I think that was part of the reason this season. And it's unfortunate, because we have seen him developing from a 13-year-old kid. And last night, I thought to myself, someone had to put Kane in his place last night, because he just goes round clubbing folk. And he was on the pitch about 60 seconds, and the wee man got him decked, which was nice to see, because I think he has bulked up a fair bit, Dembele. Declan, is he someone that a new manager could salvage? Do you think we've seen the last of Dembele, or could he stick around for a couple of seasons?
I definitely don't think we've seen the last of him. I think last night showed what the two you were saying there, that he's certainly bulked up. He can certainly do it. I don't think we've seen the last of him. Again, as I touched on earlier with Chris Ayer, I think that the bare bones of a decent squad is still there, and a good manager can get the best out of some players. And we're short on that side. We've got James Forrest is the only natural right winger. So why not give him a chance? He's there to be used. Same goes for Luke O'Connell, who'll come back, who very impressive at Queen's Park. He's played his role in getting the Spiders promoted. So I think there's positions there that are up for grabs, and let players prove it.
Absolutely. And as expected, there are differing views coming through in relation to the Palestine display. Kenny Beaton, there's a disconnect, PJ, because Celtic FC are not a political movement. I think there's also a disconnect beyond the political argument between the fans and the club. And, I'm pretty sure that there will be a charm offensive as the fans forum part of that. Today we shall wait and see. Sorry, JP.
Just on that, right? I get that, right? But the display wasn't for the purposes of Celtic to take official pictures of it and put it out on their social media. That was allowing the fans, a section of the fans, to give them a voice to do something that they were supportive of, and that a fairly significant. If you were to do a straw poll of the Celtic support, I think there is quite a large amount of the Celtic fans that would support what the Green Brigade were doing yesterday in solidarity with Palestine. I get that there's people that don't as well, but that's what Celtic's all about. Just because there's some people within our support that disagree with that doesn't mean to say that it shouldn't happen. I don't subscribe to that, and it wasn't supposed to be. This is what Celtic as a whole represents. This is just a voice of the fans. This is what we're doing. We've taken a picture. The Green Brigade have put it out onto social media. It's not automatically Celtic Football Club endorses this. This is just our fans, showing their support. So I respectfully disagree with that point of view.
Yeah,
bring up one from
Paul as well. On our board we have a former MP. On our current board, and our former chairman John Reid served in Tony Blair's cabinet. So there is politics naturally at Celtic Park. That there's currently politics at Celtic Park in our boardroom. So I think it's very hard in anybody's daily life not to have a politics involved. So the comment earlier on to say that maybe because we hold the view that what the GB did yesterday was right, that we're not true Celtic fans, I don't subscribe to it. That's nonsense. I think everybody's got a point of view, and that we all maybe support Celtic differently. But to say folk aren't true Celtic fans, I think is a nonsense.
Yeah, Red Scotland comes in, and I do agree with you. Red Scotland, it wasn't a famine, it was genocide, and loads could have been done by Charles Trevelyan et al. In relation to the genocidal kind of nature of that. I mean, when you look at the fact that there was a blight in the crop, loads could have been done. But instead of that, they just let them rot. And by the way, they were rotten. They were rotten in mud huts, and a lot of them were trying to survive, JP, by eating grass from the fields, because the potato at that time, not only for them to actually give them self-nourishment, but to farm the potato and actually have some form of income was pivotal in Ireland at that time. And at that time, Ireland was actually part of Britain. So they were just left to rot, jumping into what was called penny boats to try and escape and flee, hence the diaspora to places like Scotland and England and America, and depending on how lucky you were. Sometimes you were paying for a boat to America and you piped up in Glasgow and you weren't quite sure where you were. And that's the way it was. But 40 years later, nothing much had changed. And obviously the football club was formed to try and ease that. It was born out of oppression. And I think that's always key to remember. I was impressed with young Dembele. I was looking at Dembele on one wing, Declan and Johnson on the left. And I thought to myself, is this the future? Is this the width that we've been crying out for? I would love to see that. I know that Jamesy Forrest is your first pick, but it'd be great to see Dembele getting more game time on the right, and perhaps, I've kind of checked out on El Yunusi as well. I don't think we're going to be spending £5 million on El Yunusi, and I would much rather see Johnson getting more game time. Declan McConville, what's your thoughts?
I think Mikey Johnson, I think people are quite split on him. Again, he's had these problems with injury, which is, a real shame. I think Neil Lennon appeared to like him. He scored a cracking goal away to Sarajevo, was it, at the start of the season before? So I think there's certainly a talent there. Whether or not he gets a run of games to prove himself, as I said, it's been a while since he broke into the team, and he's been played. He get brought on at Ibrox up front. I don't think he's a striker. So on the left hand side, I'd certainly like to see him be given a chance. And whether or not Eleanor is going to be our player next season, I don't know. If the price is right, I'd still sell him, because he's not that far off Scott Sinclair's assists and goals from the 16-17 season, when Sinclair was every player of the year in the country. So that was Scott Sinclair in a good Celtic team. Mo Elanusi's been playing in a bad Celtic team, and he still produced the goods when you need him to. So I think if the price is right, yes. And I think there possibly could be a player in Mikey Johnson. Again, what JP said earlier, he's Scottish, he's young, still there to be developed. Give him a go.
I also think that, talking about development, I would like to see a bit of physical development in Mikey Johnson. He still certainly looks, Declan, a wee bit lightweight. Remember the transformation we've seen in Christie? A couple of stone he put on, and most of that was muscle in Klamala. and we want that kind of transformation, and I think he would benefit from that as well. Some great points coming through there. El Yunusi, £5 million. Would you take a punt on that deck?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, JP?
As I say, yep.
It depends what sort of transfer budget we're talking. If 5 million is a sizable amount of the amount of money that's there, I'm not sure. If we've got a quote unquote war chest, as always called, then maybe yeah.
Paul, just the stats, Sinclair Elyounoussi, this isn't updated from last night, but before that was Sinclair 16-17, 50 appearances, 25 goals, 11 assists. Moy Elyounoussi this season, 43 appearances, 17 goals, 7 assists. Not that far behind him.
And as you say, in a much more struggling side than the one Sinclair was part of. Interesting stats. We can't write them off. We can't say it's the catholification of modern football all the time. We need to trust them from time to time. A couple of quick ones then. Barkas made an appearance. He made a save as well. JP, does he have a future at Celtic Park?
If he wants one, then I would like to think that we'll give him the opportunity, because I don't think he warrants being just thrown out on a scrap heap because of this season, because he's not an absolute. It's not as if he's a calamity strewn, basket case of a keeper. It's just like Declan said, he's not been playing in a good side. Never had a set. Look at the defence that's been playing in front of him. I mean, hardly ever a settled defence, and when it has been, it's not been something that you would be very comfortable with. Beaton and Duffy, Beaton and Welsh, Laxalt, blowing hot and cold, John Joe Kenny coming in on the right hand side, Frimpong before him, who had questionable positional awareness. I think I wouldn't want, if he wants to go for family reasons or whatever, not settled here or whatever, then fine. But if on a football pitch he wants to play for Celtic, then I certainly would want to give him the opportunity.
I just think that cutting your losses, maybe on one of the big acquisitions, maybe on one of the £5 million signings, I could get that, but I think Celtic would maybe be reluctant to maybe lose on both of them. Declan, do you reckon that Barkos or even Ajeti have a future next season? I know that there's so many different ifs, buts and maybes in relation to the gaffer coming in, but as a club, if you've spent £10 million and you're going to lose half of that, it's just bad business. You would hope that we'll get one player out of the two big signings.
Yeah, I don't think Barkas is a terribly bad goalkeeper, as JP touched on there. He's played with a defence that changed from week to week. He was kind of hung out to dry as well. We were being told that he was a number one pick. Then, he plays at Livingston and gets dropped again and disappears for the rest of the time. So, I think there still could be a player there. From his time at Athens, he'd played at a decent level and wasn't a bad goalkeeper. So I think you could still get a tune out of him. Ajeti, not a clue what's going on there. We'd been told that he wasn't fit until February. Why? I don't know. And £5 million, he turned it on at Basel, certainly enough. So whether a new manager can get a tune out of him or it's an attitude issue, I don't know. But I would like us to get a tune out of both of them. Spent big money on them. And last summer, we were all delighted with that business. So I would rather we don't cut our losses and keep them, and hopefully we get something out of the two of them.
It's an interesting situation that Declan touched on there, JP. Ajeti, we're in May. Ajeti's not fit. Griffiths isn't fit enough to start a game. We give Edouard loads of stick. The boy, I say boy, he's 23, turned 23 this season. He's actually had COVID this season. We sometimes forget that. But he's kind of carried it again. I mean, he did the same last season until Griffiths came in at the kind of turn of the year, and then obviously there was a partnership that looked as though it was developing. But if I was to try and be devil's advocate on Edouard this season, and yes, like everybody else, I'm frustrated when the ball comes to him 6 yards out and he tries to put it in with his heel or the back of his boot. That's annoying. Of course it is, and missing penalties and looking disinterested. But then you think to yourself, well, where's his backup been really? Because two of the other strikers haven't been fit. The other one, Bayo, is playing in the French second division. Scored 10 goals this season, by the way, JP. But I won't ask you if you fancy him back. Are we sometimes a wee bit hard on Eddie?
I just think we've gone from this sort of love affair where whole stadiums singing the Stone Roses to an empty stadium, and he's, you know, hitting shots over the bar with the back of his heel, and I don't really know. I don't know where his head's at. I would love to think that, you know, we'd get another opportunity to see him play, you know, and sing that song again and have the stadium bouncing, because it was brilliant. You know, it was really it's a great music to football song. One of the best I've ever heard in my time supporting Celtic. I think, you know, just. Sometimes they make the transition like the Scott Sinclair song, the Logical song. I mean, that was a stroke of genius as well. And, you know, to have this guy just leave meekly, you know, with no trophies under his arm for this season, and it's just another example of how rubbish this time is, really. So I don't know. I thought his goal last night was brilliant. You know, what a ball from Bruni, and then the touch was. I mean, the touch made the goal. The finish obviously was icing in the cake, but the touch to bring that ball down like that. I mean, that's why he is what he is. And that's why he's worth the money that we all, you know, believe him to be, just not based on this season.
That was a reminder. I think anybody out there with the budget would be doing worse than to pair him up with the original Dembele, who apparently could be on the move as well. David Kelly comes in. Imagine being a keeper behind our defence. Fair point. Yeah, it would have been pretty difficult this season. And Donny Boy, 67, the holy goalie, what's he up to these days? Is he 42? He can still play, still a young man. 42 is still young, JP. That's us. That's us at the end of the bulletin for another Thursday. Fascinating as always. Thank you everybody for getting involved in the YouTube comments, also Facebook and Twitter. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so. All that's left for me to say is thanks again for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind. Declan McConville and JP Mason.